So I know the Royal Commission is focusing on sexual abuse. I'm wondering what about violence? Because violence has often happened to children who have been in the care of an institution. Will the Royal Commission look at violence, violent abuse?
Yes. Thank you. The Royal Commission was established by the Australian government specifically in relation to matters of child sexual abuse. In the terms of reference, the Australian government and all the governments that have appointed us, the state governments, have been clear that we need to look at circumstances that are related to child sexual abuse or are related to child sexual abuse. And so what we've done in relation to a number of these matters, so for example, if I can look at the Salvation Army homes or the Anglican Boys homes or the Christian Brothers homes in Western Australia where we've done case studies, in every one of those we've taken evidence from people who have described the sexual abuse but also described the physical and emotional abuse they suffered in those facilities. Our reports will not ignore the physical and emotional abuse. But in order for us to report, in order for us to take evidence, in order for us to take people's private stories, they do have to be linked in some way to sexual abuse. For many boys and girls that were in institutions, the abuse that they suffered in terms of physical and emotional abuse is as great, if not greater, than the sexual abuse. For many, there is no question the damage done by the physical brutality that they experienced has had profound and lasting effects. And whilst it's difficult to say this effect relates to the sexual abuse and this effect relates to the physical, the combination of physical abuse and sexual abuse has had extraordinarily harmful effects on people, and we are conscious of that and we are reporting on that. Second thing I just want to say about physical abuse, in some of the institutions, it's clear to us that three things were occurring. First, the institutions that had a physically brutal culture, that culture enabled sexual abuse to occur. Because if you can abuse children in one way, the perpetrators will use that as an opportunity to abuse in other ways. I'm not saying that the physical abuse led to directly the sexual abuse, but it created an enabling environment. And that is very clear in much of the work we're doing. The second thing is it is true that for some of the perpetrators, the physical act was part of the sexual act. To use the colloquial expression, they got off on the physical act. They were sexually aroused by the physical act. And so the physical act was more than a physical act. It was part of the sexual act or the sexualised behaviour. The third is that some did use physical abuse as a precondition for sexual abuse. I've heard of a number of institutions where boys and girls were beaten immediately before each and every sexual act. It was a technique to destroy the capacity of the child to resist. And so there, the physical abuse was actually linked to the sexual act as well. So we are not ignoring the physical aspects because they directly impact on the sexual abuse. But more significantly, for you as a child, whether you are sexually abused or physically abused or emotionally tortured, those combinations have had a devastating impact, and that's what we have to deal with. In some of the redress schemes that I've referred to previously, they in fact just talked about abuse. They weren't just about sexual abuse. In the Royal Commission, we are required by our terms of reference to have reference to child sexual abuse, and there needs to be some linkage to that. But many of the people that have come forward in the private sessions have spent more of the private sessions on the physical abuse than the sexual abuse because of the impacts that that's had on them at such a vulnerable stage in their life.